Hello. Welcome everyone to a late night, early morning. It's Hans Day, Woo Woo Wednesday, episode 38. The Master Hans Dietrich with us. How are you, good sir?
Doing great, Bernie. Thanks again for having me on. This is awesome. Just got back
It's
from Life Expo last weekend, which was amazing. Had an opening show at noon on Friday. About 90 people in my crowd, sold 20 books, and got to hang out with some old friends.
90 people like that. That's like pretty much 100 live people like at listening, like in person. That's pretty epic, my man.
Nailed my Dropo Stones lecture, added some new material to it, and yeah, fun. So don't get to do that very often.
Well, let's change that. The goal is that we should be doing that all the time. And, hopefully, 2025, it's going to work out. I'm going to do a road trip. I'm coming through the West Coast, make it through Oregon, down through Cali, and then got to make it to the Grand Canyon, but through it all. Also, going to be hitting up Tesla Tech Steve Ellswick's in New Mexico, I think, in Albuquerque, yeah. And then gonna try to make it to Cosmic Summit, gonna try to make it to a couple different events. But like you're on the West Coast there with the density that you're set that you could make them a decent amount of the time, but it's like
you got to come down.
Gotta come. Exactly.
See a different side of the world. It's all prairie and plains up your way, so yeah, come on down. Check out.
Well, that's if you go east, which sucks because literally you can watch your dog run away for a week straight. It's so flat. But if you go west, there's the Rocky Mountains and then the coastal mountains, and well, that the West Coast and the Rockies, they're epic if you've never been, and if you have seen and been, there's a reason why Banff National Park and Lake Louise and Jasper,
Canmore,
Canmore, and it's like that's literally my backyard, and the things I have found and discovered there, as well as so many others along the chain, whether it's Montana or British Columbia further up, it's pretty wild. And well, it then connects down as well with the Badlands and Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and the Grand Canyon, essentially. And that it's like there's just this massive, devastated, like cooked out nukes, like poisoned, probably like sea bleached, maybe even, where what they call it's badlands, nothing grows. And it's like, why is that? Because from my own research, I've found like in southern Alberta's badlands, there's literally ancient terraces and all this like built advanced like agricultural architecture and terraforming into it all. So it's like you see this throughout, whether it's in like Yemen, in Iran, in
even in India.
Yeah, and also in like South Africa a bunch, and like Peru. It's throughout, and it's all over the world. And then they call it Badlands, and there's no longer anything living, growing, or surviving in there. Another great example is South America, Peru, Bolivia areas as well. But it's like it's recognized, well, they have to because of like the actual megalithic leftover structures, the like super advanced ancient like aqueducts, and like they run from like the Andes mountains throughout the Peruvian deserts and like to the ocean. And it's like I think like 1,000 kilometers or miles or something, and it's like 3/4 of it's underground that it was built. And it's just the engineering is absolutely insane, but it's that we've now found it throughout all of these ancient sites. And shout out to Michael Collins, Wandering Wolf. He's done like probably some of the best documenting of it throughout what's called the cart rut tracks, but in fact, they're definitely not from carts or ruts, and are in fact leftover ancient aquifers and
Here,
agricultural waterways, and that I've literally now found them throughout the Badland sites of Alberta, Canada. He's documented them in Texas. They're known throughout like the Mediterranean, whether it's Malta, whether it's Greece, Italy, Lebanon, anywhere, Libya, it's they're all over, and that this was this past previous mega civilization, and that it seems like it was all cast, that it was this geopolymer that they made and on a macro grand scale, and that it's like they most likely weren't actually having to cut out these 1,000-ton blocks and physically move them. It's like they ground it down to dust, turned it into these cement compounds, and then poured it into actual casings and structures. I'm not sure, Hans, if you saw a video I did a couple weeks ago reviewing, showing Rex Bear at Leak Project, where he went through Los Alamos.
didn't see that.
Okay, I actually got to bring that up because it's where I had the revelation of actually what we're looking at what it the blocks throughout geology and these parallel lines, these straight lines, and it's like what that actually is the leftover like mold or from like the molding from the forming or the forms, right? So you would have wood forms that you pour it into, and it's like I've learned this now from working in construction, pouring concrete and seeing it in today's concrete, and like, oh, that's a straight wood line from the form that was the wood that it poured into, and then it's like that. And now it's like with that perspective, looking at all of especially the limestone and sandstone and some of the also granite stuff, but granite, I believe it's like scaliola, not geopolymer, is the technical term for the same process of liquefied cement style of
Granted.
the granite's minerals, and that it's a chemical compound bonding that so it's a chemical reaction that crystallizes that rock into that solid rock that has this Mohs hardness scale of like 7 to 9, especially in the granite dolerite sort of stuff. And they're like, how does it cut? How did they move it all? And it's like, well, they just ground it down into powder and then you recrystallize it. And that's so much different and exponentially stronger on the bonding level than our modern crappy concrete, which is like a sedimentary formation of just water drying out and it like packing together, and that's the best. And that is why ancient Roman concrete is
Here,
documented and known that it's still a mystery of how did they make it and how has it lasted all these thousands of years and so much stronger. And it's like, well, we do know, and it's chemical reaction, chemical bonding, geopolymer sort of chemistry.
well, it's interesting. Obviously, the ancients had some sort of alchemy because you look at the Amazon and it's all, excuse me, it's all made from terra preta. And so terra preta is a man-made soil that they use biochar and all sorts of other elements, and they would pack it and pack it and pack it, with feces and other things, and create this rich alluvian soil. And this is what 90% of the Amazon is made up of. It's all man-made, and then obviously something happened in the world, and it was all left derelict. And when they do radar scans and LiDAR going over the Amazon, they're starting to recognize that there's these massive city complexes within the Amazon that could have held millions of people. and nobody knows what happened to these cultures. And so if they're making terra preta on a level like that where they can grow sustainable foods and whatnot, I'm sure they had alchemical aspects where they could create or recreate stone. And so that's interesting that you say that, because even going to Peru and seeing some of the ancient sites at Peru, you kind of got to wonder, okay, how are they putting these, polyagonal shapes together perfectly without some sort of, using this geopolymer in a bag and then forming it, and then you burn the bag off, and you see the evidence of what do you call it when you burn stone? You get like a crystallization on the surface of the stone all over Peru. And so there's obviously an aspect of this that is interesting and could be potentially true. And there's a French guy who was thinking that maybe this is how the pyramids were built. However, having seen the Great Pyramid and the Middle Pyramid and the Small Pyramid at Giza, none of those blocks are identically the same size, and so they would not have been using the same mold, which is interesting.
No, well, that's the key, Hans, is that they literally intentionally made every mold slightly different for that polygonal structure-wise that absorbs like the earthquakes or the energy, and that makes them earthquake-proof, and that it's like you're just building with wood, making the forms, and then pouring each one differently, or on its own, filling that space.
That's what you notice at the Great Pyramid. It's like you look at it and it's like none of these stones are the same size, but they all interlock, to some degree. Obviously, there's been a lot of earthquakes there, and you see the evidence of that.
And so, from a logical engineering point of view, Hans, think of, instead of having to carve each one of those individually different and placing it and then measuring the different things in between, it's like, no, you just take these wood forms, make the box, and pour this one, then do the next one, then do the next one. And it's like you'd intentionally be like taking wood that is just from the tree, not trying to all make it the exact same 2x4 or 4x4, whatever. It's like, all right, we're just getting whatever we can to fill that spot, and then you make it like that intentionally, and that is the polygonal style of the megalithic or cyclopean style of megaliths that they say. And it's like, no, that is super advanced, and that was from a global macro civilization that they were using and pouring and doing the geopolymer concrete style.
Agreed. And like you said, most of these areas are sitting over ley lines, and ley lines are sitting over massive aquifers of water or water bodies, and there's geological movement there. And so they built these structures so that they could withstand that. If you're building something that has the exact same size stone everywhere, you're going to have, like the Romans, marching across the bridge in lockstep. You're going to create this resonance energy effect that's eventually going to rip the structure apart. But if they're all different sizes, then that energy dissipates differently, and it doesn't rip the structures apart, which is why the Romans decided instead of doing lockstep, everybody would do shuffle step. So,
yes, this is live, and that's exactly it, right? And we're just starting to refigure that out. So I'm gonna play here, and what we're showing, that's Rex Bear, and these are these caves right outside of Los Alamos, New Mexico, and this supposed cart rut. And Rex also saying, no, this is clearly agriculture. And Hans, I figured you would definitely like what's directly in front of that and above that, what almost looks like those quote unquote scoop marks there on the
all
side.
over Aswan. Yeah, these were done with rocks and stones and chicken bones. And I'm like, no, there's obviously some mechanism that's scooping down under and pulling material out. And it's about a meter wide, and it's everywhere. It's all over Aswan, and there's no way that you cannot see it once you see it. And so, wow, okay. Oh, wow, there it is. They even have a ladder there. Amazing. No, just kidding.
Right? Like, Oh, yes, that's all they had. These wooden ladders. Don't look that underneath that wooden ladder, there's carved stairs into the side of the place,
Wow,
built
this is
into mountain. And right, this blew my mind. And it's like this for me was the smoking gun because it also connects and shows a lot of what I've found in Alberta, but just in better condition. And so here again, you see what's commonly known as a cart rut. In this case, they're trying to claim that it's just a path worn down, chiseled out. It's like, no, that is an agricultural aqueduct, and that's what these things are. And that after seeing so many cases from Wandering Wolf, Michael Collins documenting these and explaining that and showing it, that as soon as I saw this in Rex video here of um, Los Alamos, that exact same thing, and that it's clearly everywhere. It's hidden, and uh, amongst it now, you'll see there's like these straight lines a lot of the time that you're going to start seeing, and that is the leftover from the form of when this geopolymer was poured. So like right here, you see this part like this, and it's like they'll run oftentimes for tens of meters or like quite a while, and it's like
there
from
were
a
ancient
geological point, it's like, how does nature break that exact straight all the way through? And it's like, it didn't. That was created and poured, and that's the leftover of it.
it's similar to what you see at a site in Peru called Tipon. And so when you're there, they only show you the waterworks. That's, you know, the modern Inca structure. And we had about an hour before we had to go back to the bus. And I told Brian, I'm going to go up the hill as far as I can. And so three of us wandered up this path and went up the hill following where the water was coming down. And the water trough goes all the way up and over the mountain to the other side. We didn't go up as far as we could,
Right.
but every
Over it. The engineering
several,
is so
yeah,
insane.
every several hundred meters was a spill off. And so it was like this area where water from this trough would spill off into. There's no water running in it now, but it would spill off into it. And the Inca, or the previous civilization that was there, had built these megalithic rocks in a square like housing formation. So they were collecting water that then they could use for fields or for irrigation. And it was one of the most fascinating sites. But literally, they only show you the waterworks at Tipon because they've kind of, you know, built that up as the tourist attraction. But if you're ambitious and you have the time, God, go up the hill and you'll see so much more that's up there. That's all megalithic. And Brian's like, wow,
it's like
I've
throughout
never
all of the mountains there, right? They're like, oh, just look at this one. And it's like, no, it's literally built through the entire mountain system. And it's actually literally built through the entire continents of South America, Central America, and North America, as you're seeing here. And like, just look at like this top right corner, and you
you,
see that one line, like that's a gutter. That's what's like a cement gutter that you'd make nowadays out of concrete, and that's what these are. And that you just have to understand and observe that it's like this is from the pre-cataclysm, so it's at least 12,000 years, if not older. So you have that much age and or more, and potentially exponentially more, could be hundreds of thousands, maybe even million.
well,
Who really knows? But it's like that there's that much natural erosion that has since gone through it and like destroyed it, which makes it look like natural weathering. But that's from the base foundation of something that was massively built by a huge advanced global civilization prior.
is there any evidence of like lichen up there? Are there lichen patches in any of this stuff? I'm not
Most likely, yes.
But
But
you see all over Peru are these, 6 foot wide lichen patches, and lichen grows at a specific elevation and it grows at a specific rate at different elevations. And so the stuff that you see at Ayante Tambo on the walls, you're like, how old is this structure? Because those lichen patches are huge, and you're at 13,000 feet. So you've got to really
Yes, right.
stretch.
So high up in the mountains that it's like they literally could grow for like a week or a month or something a year. And it's like, yeah, it like takes thousands, tens of thousands. I know
To grow
exactly
a
what you're talking about.
patch. Yeah, exactly. And they're everywhere, especially at Ayante Tambo. That site blew my mind with how much lichen was there on the walls. And so we're looking at a very advanced ancient civilization, and all the skeptics are like, well, we don't have any evidence of an ancient civilization. Are you kidding me? It's there in the stone. How do you not see it?
Right. It's literally hidden in plain sight in front
Apparently
of
that's
everyone.
in history. We had the technology to cut, dress, and move massive blocks of stone that we cannot move today. You go to Lebanon, you go to Baalbek, and you got 12,000-ton pieces sitting there, or 1,200. I guess it's 1,200-ton pieces sitting there, but 1,200 tons. I mean, 100 tons is 200,000 pounds. So do the math, folks. We don't have technology that can move any of this stuff. And not only did they cut, dress, and quarry it at Baalbek, but they moved it uphill to what is now the Temple of Jupiter. Originally was the Temple of Saturn, and whatever it was before that, the Trilithon and a bunch of other stones that are up there. And you've just got to wonder how on earth, A, were they doing this, and B, moving them. It's so mind-boggling. But today we're still going, oh, this is a primitive hunter-gatherer civilization that was doing this. And I'm like, hunter-gatherer civilization doesn't have the technique or the technology to cut stone like this. I'm sorry, they just
not to mention organize, engineer, do the mathematics, the architecture, the planning. Like it's so absolutely insane to claim that it's like, oh, they just magically assembled from like having spears and hunting animals to just engineer, build stuff we can't build today.
Who's feeding this group of master masons that are building this stuff? Obviously you need thousands of people to do this. Who's feeding them? Who's watering them?
Teaching them? You need like mathematics, you need blueprints, you need it's so insane. Like if you actually work in construction, which I've now been doing for a few months, and like actually like taking in the amount of like knowledge, work, like measurements, like processes, tools, and it's just so wild and insane that it's like. And then you see what we have above here, and it's like you see what is clearly these old gutters or drainage, and that you have those straight lines, that 90-degree forms, angles. So it's like it was poured in those forms. It's like a modern day gutter that goes through on the side of your road. That's what this was. And then you see these random cracks that break, and it's like, oh, well, that's just like how cement breaks today. Oh, look at that. So no, it didn't.
It looks like it's not even a perfect cement because there's bubbles and defects within it. But that
just
could
like
also
cement.
Right. That could also be the materials that they're using degrading over time while the other stuff isn't. Interesting.
Exactly, right? And so you have like at least 10,000 years of natural erosion weathering, if not like a lot more, plus the original. So see, it's like these straight.
It either much older, or it could be within the last 10,000 years, because you got to remember where this is. Where this is Los Alamos. Okay, so this isn't up your direction. I was like, oh, if this is up your direction, that was under 2 miles of ice, So I'm sure that wasn't where things were happening. But looking at this looks like a lot of different sites in Peru that have these cuts in the rock formations, the natural rock formations, but they're cutting into it because they're bringing water to different sites. And obviously these reservoirs or these springs have dried up in our recent past, but the evidence of old technologies and old water,
the original foundations, and like mass everywhere. So it's like you can see that's where the forms were, that's where the wood was when it was originally poured. and that it's like then you have everything straight was
Oh my God,
concrete being poured into the forms.
footprints
Then
there.
you have all the traps.
There's ancient footprints there. Wait, what's
Oh
going
yeah,
on?
like some concrete.
Are we gaming now? Oh, that's yeah. That was weird. Oh, this is
Right, so
really,
like all the way down there, like there.
and you can see it wraps around the corner. Yep. Wow, this is really fascinating. And it goes. There's sloughs that come off into it. Wow, are you kidding me? Yeah, this is all man-made. Wow. Wow.
Exactly, right? So it's like when you're starting to like actually see it and understand it, so it's like these are big pieces that have broken
Well,
off this
the second
original mass structure
around
where
the
everything was poured.
wow. You don't get rounded corners, but hey, at least they were using the natural flow of water. Today we build everything in straight lines. All our pipes are in straight lines and angular, and water
Well,
doesn't.
it's engineered like that. It's extremely intelligently engineered for those flows to keep the water at that uh, straight, like
Well,
level
but it would
flow
be
rate, just like they have in Peru. It's the same everywhere.
it would be activated water. It would be hydrogenated because it's keeping that natural flow. Where today's piping technology breaks all that up, and that's why the water that comes through your tap tastes like crap, other than all the other stuff that they put in it.
So I also want to show here, so you have this outer casing layer that is on top of everything. So that was also poured on it. And it's like that's your outside, and then you have the inside. Uh, so it's like there's two things, and it's like there's caves throughout here, and you're gonna get your mind blown even more. So just see like wood being put there, like the forms when you pour it.
I'm looking at the petroglyphs
And
all that are all carved in.
yeah, he's
The question is this a softer stone that was originally there and they were able to carve these structures into it, or were they pouring this? Those are the two questions. Because the amount of time that's passed, that there's this much degradation, it could be a poured technology, but it could all. But looking at it, it looks very unnatural. Yeah,
so
but
definitely poured originally, and then you have civilizations inhabiting afterwards with lesser abilities, but still being able to utilize it, change it, and that's where you see some of the misdirection sort of thing of like it's like they were just reusing the original structure foundations. And so here you can see like these holes in there's actually it's caves and apartments.
I'd be interested
I
to know
got
what,
it. Here we go.
or maybe
Here we go. Here.
sandstone, if it's something softer, because a lot of this could have been
So there's
carved.
both sandstone and limestone. That's what's I have to give credit to Paul Cook. Despite my former troubles with him, he has made these discoveries, and he found it in the UK as well as Malta as well as Egypt, traveling to all three, and that there's this limestone outer layer or inner layer, and then the sandstone, right? That they do both, and um, it's also in the Grand Canyon, and it's also what we see
Well, this is an
here and in.
see this at Giza as well in the subterranean, and it's all limestone. There's some granite down there, but not much because it's the bedrock, and the bedrock on the Giza Plateau is mostly limestone. But you see that so much water has washed through the subterranean area that whatever was in there, there's two block shapes that are just melted down from all the water that's gone through there. And this is obviously the much older structure than the rest of the Great Pyramid. And so the question is, was that built first? Was it a site originally? There's a well shaft there, so they're bringing water to the Giza Plateau, and then they built the pyramids over it, or vice versa. I'm not entirely sure, but I know going down into those
So,
structures that it is very much eroded by water, similar to what we're looking at here. Very similar, yeah.
And
And you get
what Paul
these.
Cook has shown and taught is that these are the limestone inner polygonal megalithic blocks, and that you have both the sandstone and the limestone throughout, and that you have these poured holes that, like, those were lights, those were venting, that was plumbing. And then you see right here that you have these indentations where literally that's where your cables would run for your like electricity, your plumbing. And that he shows this in the UK, he shows this in Malta, he shows this in Jordan and Egypt. And it's like, now I'm showing you Rex finding and showing the exact same thing here in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And that it's also what I found, believed to have found in Alberta at Writing on Stone. But it's the specifically right here, you can see like that's where a cord would go. That's where a light or an appliance or plumbing, also up here. And that,
Well, these holes are interesting because this could have also been an observatory at nighttime. So you'd go into this cave structure.
oh, it would definitely also have those built into it 100%.
The different, star patterns or certain
The
stars.
archaeology, you're 100% right on that. And we need to, that's the importance of going to these places during the solstices and equinoxes and taking the pictures and documenting it and aligning it to then build the evidence in case of showing it as a worldwide former mass practice and civilization and engineering and architecture practice, right? Like
So there's a stone
stuff.
for what it's called. It's in one of the museums, well, at least a copy of it is, but you can actually go see the original stone. And the stone is cut like a model. And so it has all these waterways, it has like structures on it. And it's almost as if they were planning something that they would build at a larger structure. And looking at this looks very similar to something like that, where they would have all these like cut different waterways and pathways that water could flow. And it was almost as if they were trying to figure out the best way to flow water naturally without it, corrupting or overspilling, but actually trickling through the system. And so this is interesting that we have these, I mean, they look very natural, but obviously aren't. But the natural aspect of this is they're bringing water in a natural flow. As I was saying, they're hydrogenating water. They're using the natural, springs that were up in this area.
And using it as irrigation. And it's like they built it so that it would like then flow down. And that's a lot of the time you'll find like these agricultural like terraces and stuff that they'll like pour down into or would have utilized.
This is all come on now.
And a bit of what you've observed and are documenting of what you experienced down in Peru is it's like then the Inca and Aztec or whatnot, these civilizations afterwards that re-inhabited these areas after the collapse of the original builders and civilization and the original destruction and loss of ability and understanding to like reproduce it from the ground up. It's then they're trying to assess how to like best fix and use and apply with their primitive like carving, building, style technologies and just process knowledge that that's what you're seeing. That's why it's like some of it looks super primitive, some of it super advanced, some of it natural, right?
It's almost like they inherited the site and reconstructed what they could of it and repurposed.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. This is what you see all over Peru. Everybody's like, oh, the Inca built all this. No, they did not.
They inhabited it and then tried to salvage it. And yes, they did build some repairs. Yes, they did probably build a lot of original stuff on top, but none of it, any of it, close to the quality craftsmanship or technology of what's always at the bottom and buried below, right? Like it's like how is the base exponentially more advanced
Yeah.
than the top every time?
It
And
would
so
be interesting to see where these spill out into, like if they spilled out into irrigation areas or ancient fields. Obviously, considering the age of this site, I wouldn't imagine that any of that was left, but it would be interesting to see where this stuff spilled out, because you're obviously converting and reverting a water system that was naturally there. So whether or not it was a spring coming out of the hill, whatnot, but you're using this for some sort of irrigation or water source for whatever civilization was living here, because obviously this area seems very terraced for either housing or other, I couldn't imagine farming, because you'd have to build, as we were talking earlier, terra preta on top of this, which would have been huge. So, but they're obviously using these as water channels to bring water somewhere. And so that's the ultimate question: is what was the output of this water system?
absolutely. Trying to find a couple key spots that
Give me
really.
cat's going ballistic. I gotta go deal with her for a second. Hold on one sec, dude.
Yeah, no worries, brother. And yeah, so it's several stages of civilizations re-inhabiting past former more advanced civilization that poured and built the base foundation. So here, right here is what I found to be some of the prime evidence of, oh, let's skip ahead.
I'm back.
Very good. Here we go. I think this spot. Okay.
Meowing, wanting to get water from the sink, so I have to go turn the sink on. All right. Old cats.
That's a classic cat right there, right? Cat's life. Oop. Come on. Okay, so what I'm trying to highlight here quickly and show, you see the straightness here and the straightness here, and then you see this straight line, that straight line, and that straight line, that one and that one, and it's like that is a sheet of wood, 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 and that those
How
were
thick would
the
this wood need to be to create a
meters,
polished?
right? Like they're all, it's megalithic blocks. They're tons by tons, and it's poured step by step by step, and that's what explains why you have these crazy straight angles, these crazy straight lines, these 90 degrees. It's because it poured into that foundation, the forms that you see in modern day concrete pouring building like we do today.
Interesting. And we do use
So
formation. Yep.
exactly, and it'll highlight even more uh, right along here a bit. Here we go. Here we go. That's that right there. Oh, there you go. See that? Like that, and that, like along a lot of the canyons, the Grand Canyon itself, they're like, oh, look at these massive megalithic blocks that have got to be cut out. It's like it wasn't cut, it was actually poured, I
Yep.
believe. And this clearly
I
is
have a feeling
demonstrating.
a lot of this would have been poured. Interesting. Why would you have straight cuts like that? And then you
Right?
can go
It's
go, go,
poured.
go back slightly if you can.
So poured
right
as one
you can see that line
piece.
cutting through where the other block is sitting there, and you can see the other line, the vortices of those lines. Interesting. It would be nice to see
And so,
the beneath, just to see, how many layers are stacked upon each other, or if it's just stacked on top of existing
absolutely.
air. Yeah. Wow. As we know, well, nature does make straight lines, but not in this material.
And
is
then
this
it's like
is
a
this
lot of
path
it's eroded.
is this path an ancient path, or is this a modern path,
Oh
or
yeah, absolute ancient. Like this is
oh,
like
there,
uh,
that's that
uh
giveaway right there. No, go back. Right there.
boom,
Bingo.
boom.
You see this on the roadside in Peru. Like you'll be driving. This is the amazing thing about Peru is like in Egypt, everything's at different sites, but in Peru, you're driving along the road and you're like, where? Stop the bus. What's that? And on the side of the road is this cut structure into the natural bedrock, or it could be poured. And it looks a lot like that, where there's like sunken areas, very obviously striations of lines. Yep. This is fascinating. Interesting. I missed this show. I might have been out of town.
Right? So it's like it gives a new perspective, and that I'll do another full episode like showing these examples, putting them next to the examples of Peru, putting them in the examples that Paul Cook
But
has shown, and then
not the post here. They found human hairs in some of these. Yeah, you find that in Peru as well, and that's interesting that you say that. Thank you. Not sure. Very very true.
how else would that happen if not for being poured?
Yep.
All right, so covered a lot of that. 46 minutes going into that. Um, all right. Wasn't what I was planning on going on, but
Oh, but that's beyond fascinating because this
it
leads into
was
a lot of the stuff.
epic and good. Shall we?
What's that?
Sorry, I was freezing up a moment. Um, shall we segue into the second half if you're up for it? And you got any closing thoughts and ideas on that before we switch over to the plasma side of
I
things?
just want to say I picked up two amazing books at Conscious Life Expo. This one is by Katie Norris, brilliant researcher. She spoke after I did, and so we exchanged books, and I'm looking forward to diving deep into that. And I finally got to meet Mike Ricksecker, and I bought his book on the mysterious triangles of Alaska. So super fascinated with that.
Really?
Yeah, Mike was
I
a
mean,
good. Met him the first day that I was there, and I'm just like, Mike, and he's like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Hans Dietrich. He's like, oh my god, you've chatted on my post a couple of times. I'm like, yeah, not quite the asshole that I am online sometimes, but if things flare out at me, I might comment on them. But yeah, just wanted to meet you, and I love your work, and yeah, we all got to hang out on Super Bowl Sunday, which was Super Bowl Sunday for everybody because nobody was watching the game. We were all just engaged in conversation, and it was awesome. Yeah, it was a good time.
that's even better, right? Just bringing the people together.
And that's
Three-quarters of these people don't watch the football. Actually, for
I
like
watched
the
the
first
halftime show, and I was kind of blown away with the Saturnian symbology in the halftime show. That it really blew my mind.
do go on, do go on.
If you look at the layout, there's 9 squares. So the 9 squares become the Saturn's cube. 6 of them become the Saturn's cube, and the others become aspects of it. And they're all in black. It was just there was a lot of interesting symbology going on in the halftime show that I think 99% of the people watching it completely missed. But it wasn't the greatest of halftime shows ever. Wasn't into the song, but it was interesting to watch, obviously, because you have the stage, and so what are you gonna present, or what are your handlers gonna tell you to present? And so, I mean, if you have that kind of an audience, there's obviously some sort of manipulation going on there. We got to remember Katy Perry coming out, dressed as the Baphomet, riding the golden the golden lion or whatever she was riding during her halftime show a couple years ago when she did her thing. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on at these shows, and so everybody needs to pay attention. But the one thing that blew my mind was the Hims and Hers commercial. Everybody's into Ozempic. Ozempic's got some horrific problems, obviously, and so they start off their ad with, the healthcare system or the food system is poisoning us, and it's like, okay, but you're owned by BlackRock and other corporations that are feeding us this poison, and now you're giving us the solution. Wait, what's
right?
wrong?
Like,
What's wrong
nice
with
sleight of hand.
It's like the same people, catch a thief to, send a thief to catch a thief kind of scenario. And it was very fascinating to watch. I'm glad I'm not into that, but it's always the halftime show and the ads that are the ones that everybody, seems to stick around to see what's going on there.
Right. And so one aspect I was intrigued with was that they had Kendrick Lamar, and that the last song he finished with was the call out the pedo-ness, and that you're into A minor. It's like, was that a message that they're actually calling out the
Or
bad?
or signaling to their crowd, wink, wink, right?
Well, it's like the drama in it, it's like it was a diss track kind of to Drake for like him and Diddy sort of thing.
Yep, exactly.
And it's like, are they just washing it and making it look like they're doing something, or are they actually doing something about it, I guess?
We'll see. Time will tell. And I think a lot of what's going on in politics right now, it's like rapid fire to get some things done. And I'm politically homeless. I sit on the fence and watch both sides, and it's really interesting to watch. But everybody's freaking out over the rapid fire, but they're not realizing that some of this stuff takes time to bake in. You're reconstructing a system that's taken 40 years to build, and so you've got to start somewhere. So some of it's good, some of it's horrific. I've lost work over it because of I work with companies that deal with communicable diseases in Africa and whatnot. And so, most of my clients that I work with lost all their funding because, of all this. And yeah, it's been really interesting to watch. I don't know where to go with that. Anyway, sidetrack there. Let's move on.
Fair enough. But it's true. It's interesting times to be alive. Godheart Guardian, a wizard, never gives away his magic. Well, at least not in the moment. All I can say is Dr. Dongo decided to F around and find out. Do you know what I'm talking about, Hans? Or
Zero.
have you ever heard of or watched the YouTube channel Old World Florida?
I have not.
There's a reason why. You probably enjoy like 25 to 50% of it, and then you'd probably be repulsed by the other 50%. He does do some good work, but we've had a bit of a beef going back and forth.
You have.
Yeah, he's got like 100,000 subscribers ish on his channel. Shem Tartarian Truth, right? Yeah, so Shem's good friends with both of us, and it's like, so Shem did a New Year's Tartarian truth stream with and so this guy calls himself Dr. Narco Longo, and
It's all in the
exactly, it's all in the name, and there's rumors that he actually got pinched selling drugs around a school and narked to get himself out of it. So I called him out on that. Um, but anyways,
not my,
Shem and him did this stream on New Year's, like the Truthy Awards or something, and it was like Shem calling out, making fun of like all the biggest grifters, and I didn't watch to the end. I guess at the end, this wannabe Doctor Dongo went on a monologue cussing me out. I still haven't seen it, but I found out the other night, and then I hacked his channel and posted a couple of diss videos on his own channel, cussing him out, caused a whole bunch of a stir, and cage match on top of the Ohio Serpent Mound, and that there's already like this YouTube meetup event happening there. So we're like, hey, why don't we try to turn it into Truther Fights YouTube Fight Club? And I was like, well, I call this guy out, and I don't know. I don't condone violence, but hey, for entertainment purposes, on
we're
raising awareness of the Serpent Mound, why not?
we're all each other's missing puzzle pieces, even the bad ones, and we're all navigating waters. And instead of burning bridges, let's forge path forward. You know, that's kind of the key to the undiscovered country, right? That's the future, and we all need to be figuring that out. Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. Anyway.
Absolutely. And it's like, yeah, I'm not putting too much effort or energy into it going forwards. I think, I don't know, I don't even know if he's addressed it publicly, but whatever. Beat him at his own game. I laughed for like 24 hours straight, and moving on. Not put more energy into that. What we are putting,
Sesame Street, we've got Bert and Ernie.
and between them, what I am putting energy into is, well, and shout out to David Stiggs, because he actually about a month ago showed me, it's like a Microsoft AI program, and I'm pretty sure it's the exact same
Not
one.
Copilot, but something other, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's what this JD's channel is using. But it's what's interesting. I've been following this channel now for a few weeks and catching up on their videos, and how it's like how the AI are keeps learning, and like he keeps feeding more information and research into it, and then just the progression, and it's like he's doing it into like the plasma, into alchemy, into occult, into electric universe, into like all the crazy cool breakthrough fringe science stuff that like we're already looking into and work with ourselves. And yeah, so I'm gonna play a little bit of it right meow. If
Sure, it is for fun having beef with a vegetarian, but vegetarians need to realize that beef is vegetarian. So anyway.
My mom, actually, lifelong vegetarian, 75 years of age, 1 month ago was like, I'm doing the carnivore diet. I need to lose some weight. I hear good things. And she switched over, and she's actually like eating lamb, beef, all sorts of stuff, just enjoying it. And it's like, good for you, mom. Good for moms.
Score.
All right. Do you know of Ken Wheeler?
Yes.
The Apophysis. So, in this episode from 3 weeks ago, JD's
Eclectic
eclectic collection channel. He's got the two AIs, or the AI two characters, discussing, going over the Ken Wheeler principles.
What is it? What is this generated from? What are the AIs? Curious.
So yeah, I think it's that Microsoft program that Stig was showing that we were already planning. I was already planning on doing some videos with it myself into exactly this, and well, JD's eclectic collection beat me to it. So I'm reaching out to him to see if I can have him on, as well if I can get access to whatever one he's using, so we don't have to start all over again and just keep adding to the database of these AIs, taking in all of this information, processing it, and how they discuss it. It's quite fascinating. But we'll do that one second. This one on the plasma is, we'll start with this. Pretty epic. You love plasma, don't you, Hans?
But of course.
We're back for more.
More, yeah.
And we're
This is their
going
second
even deeper into this electric universe stuff and the bioplasma bodies.
Yeah, we barely scratched the surface last time.
Yeah.
You've given us a ton more to dig into.
hard.
Yeah, you guys sent in some
It's-
like crazy research papers.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Some interviews with people who I never even heard of before.
It's amazing stuff.
Historical accounts.
Yeah.
So we're ready to really like go deep on this one.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Yeah, so we talked about how this electric universe idea is saying like, hey, the universe isn't primarily about atoms.
Right.
It's more about plasma,
Yeah.
which is a huge idea, right?
Absolutely. It throws out the textbook and says, hey,
Yeah,
we need to rethink this.
exactly. Yeah. So
What's interesting too is that like
yeah,
we think of
The AIs, hey, we need to
So wait,
rethink
those,
this.
those,
Oh no,
those,
it's not
those are the
atoms.
those are the two AIs speaking.
Yes, sir.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, that's wow! I thought this was a conversation on this video. So I'm curious if we've been able to recreate these plasma experiments that we see on the sun in fluidic mediums, because there's a thought that the majority of space isn't a vacuum; it is fluidic, which would allow the plasma electric universe to exist. And so I found that very fascinating. And obviously seeing these plasma storms on the sun, I've seen so many of these. Right there, the Earth is the size of the tip of that arrow.
The arrow, right?
Yeah. Wow.
I'm with you. And to answer your question, I myself have recreated a little bit of it in the monoatomic
Fluid.
Ormus plasma fluids on their nano micro scale of self-organization.
So you're getting arc bubbles like what we would see on the sun, but on the laboratory bench level, like a micro level.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's what makes this so epic and relevant. Went to myself, and I actually came up with a few revelations when watching this all again last night, putting it together, and I'll get to it as it comes to it in the discussion here.
of ourselves as these solid beings walking around.
Yeah.
And feel
But really, we're made of
free
the same
to
stuff as
get me
stars.
deposit on
Yeah.
any
Plasma.
So it's not just about the stuff that stars are made of,
Right.
but the stuff that we're made of too, right?
Yeah.
But what makes plasma so important to study?
Well, for one, it's the key to understanding how stars work, how galaxies form, and even the origins of the universe itself. But there's more to it than that.
Okay, like what?
Well, one of the most fascinating things about plasma is that it doesn't always behave like a typical gas. It can self-organize, forming these intricate.
right there. It's like I
This
also pick up
conversation
a lot
is
of stuff
too
the AI
placid.
gets wrong a little bit too.
This conversation is way too placid. It sounds way too natural, which is kind of creepy in a weird way. I cut my feed so that this can stream for you. No, we're both having bandwidth issues, so wow. What?
Right? And yeah, so feel free to ask me to pause at any point, and I'll also be pausing because there's so much, and it gets even more intense.
Just
and
the
that
inflections on both of their voices. It's just like, what? She's like, oh yeah, Wait,
right, like
what?
the emotion, right, like, and like their narration, it's like
That's
hard
so
to like,
that's so creepy. Oh my god, I hate to say it. Because
right,
what can we tell is natural these days? Are we both AI now? I'm sure, because your voice and my voice have been cloned 3 million times now from every podcast that we've ever done, and so who knows?
there will be a BernEye, the mad science guy AI at some point. I promise that I will make it happen because
No,
it
please
needs to.
don't. No, please don't. Anyway, go on.
Intricate structures like filaments, spirals, and even
Crystals. I thought crystals were solid things.
that's where things get really interesting.
If you're unsure,
So, real quick question. So, are the images also
AI
AI?
bringing up plasma crystal.
Are the
Sorry?
AI are the AIs also creating the imagery that like this? Is this coming from the AI generator
No,
as well?
no. The imagery is put in and done by the JD channel actual human. So it's like he puts in the information for the AIs to analyze and discuss, and then he comes up and adds all the
So
reference.
it is
Um,
prompt. Oh my god, this is brilliant. You got to send me a link to this.
right? 100%. It's really good. But I also I'll try to stop it and point out, because the AIs do get a few things wrong here and there that they don't quite understand. Like, she's the female AI voice there is like, well, one thing is that like plasma doesn't act like a regular gas. So it's like, yes, because plasma is the fourth state of matter, it's not a gas. That is why it doesn't do that. And it's like later on in the discussion, they acknowledge and recognize that, of course, it's plasma, the fourth state, not gas, the third state, but that
But
it gets
in a
itself
natural
wrong
expression
within
of
some things,
conversation,
right?
it would do that. Honestly, because to the layman, we don't know what plasma is, right? And so we think it's a form of gas, but in reality, it isn't. It's another form of matter. So yeah, go on.
Quad 10, why does the AI, listening to the AI, rage you so much? Like, where there's two human reviews of it and the original human creator that put it into. It's just we're using the AI aspects to like how it organizes it. And give her a chance. Give old AI a chance, even though we all know it's our new overlord that's going to murder us all because we're
You want to
retarded.
punch
We
the new?
programmed them to murder us. But
I
yes,
love that. That's fucking awesome. Anyway, sorry.
Study, exploring its properties in depth.
So he gave it a name and started figuring out how it actually works. That's pretty groundbreaking.
Absolutely. He systematically investigated plasma's electrical conductivity, its interaction with magnetic fields, its tendency to form waves and oscillations. Basically, he laid the groundwork for our modern understanding of plasma. But as with any scientific endeavor, there were plenty of mysteries and surprises along the way.
Oh, I love a good scientific mystery. What kind of surprises?
Well, one of the most baffling and persistent puzzles in plasma physics is the phenomenon of ball lightning.
right? Like the fact that they're able to bring up, and before you judge,
Well,
listen
what
to,
what what dude said just recently? It was very obvious that was an AI reaction, but wow, interesting that was the question that was posed. So
and it gets better. Like,
wow,
trust, it gets better.
keep going.
Ever heard of those eerie glowing spheres that sometimes appear during thunderstorms?
Yeah, ball lightning.
Oh.
Always sounded like something out of science.
I instantly paused right here because I actually had this thought independently on my own. I maybe subliminally I saw this, but I don't think I actually recognized this image. But that Tesla himself, a key part of his own experiments was he actually successfully was reproducing ball lightning. He was known for it, and that's something that isn't really talked about or reproduced or acknowledged in modern times. But right there, that's a picture of
Interesting. I read a lot of Tintin. I have like the entire Tintin collection, and there is one called the something of the sun, the Children of the Sun, and they talk about ball lightning in that. And so this is from like the 1940s, I believe, when Herrick was writing all of these and illustrating all these novels. And so obviously this was known back then. So this was coming out of Tesla technology, I would imagine, because how else would you know about, conformed ball lightning, something that you could harness and move around, and that's what ball lightning is. And so you go to places like Joshua Tree. I've never been there, but I was talking with Jimmy Church about this on the channel when I was on his podcast, and he's never seen it, but apparently there's a lot of ball lightning that you can see driving down the road in these areas that, at certain times a year, depending on the right pressure and piezoelectric, aspects, that all of a sudden you have ball lightning. And it
Interesting.
based on the magnetics. And so here you have a plasma electromagnetic technology, or well, it would be not what we think of nuts technology. It would be a technology of sorts, whether it's natural or not, traveling across the land based on seismic and piezoelectric activity in the area. I mean, when you're rubbing granite with granite, you're going to create a piezoelectric effect. And so how far does that spread? How big does it get? Obviously, Tesla was dealing a lot with this, with his cage technology, as we're showing here in the picture. But wow, this is interesting that, yeah.
Well said and brought up. And a key point that they're going to bring up is directly reflective of what Hans just said. So I'm going to let it play for a minute and then I'll stop it again. But it's very interesting. And just add in Bob Grenier at the Martin Fleisch Memorial Project. One of the main things he focuses on is this orb ball lightning technology and how to do it, reproduce it, and how it's the key to it all. And foremost with the 4 orbs Ashton Forbes plasma orbs and the MH370 thing, and it potentially actually being proven, the case being broken wide open, if this whistleblower that potentially was arrested and thrown in jail from the Army signals for leaking it, if he actually talks to Ashen and acknowledges it, it'll be confirmed, which is just wild. But I'm going off on a tangent, and we'll just get back.
Real quick, in the chat, there's Quaten. I've only seen the natural ball. Yeah, this one here. So the question is, where were you when you saw this, and what did it look like to you?
And I have to also now bring up the story my dad has told me his whole life from when he was a child living out in Saskatchewan in, I think, like the 50s anyways, it was lightning hit the railroad track, and he said it was like about a mile, because they lived 1 mile. They lived on the mile marker from the town, so they were like exactly 1 mile out from the town. So he said like it pretty much the lightning hit like right at the edge of town, and this ball lightning traveled along the entire track, so pretty much straight mile down, and then he said it stopped right in front of their door, but across the highway, across the ditch on the railroad track. Then it flew over the ditch, then flew over the highway, then came down like the 100-meter driveway and straight through the screen door. He said traveled through the screen door, and then it came and it stopped right in front of him. He was like just like paralyzed, like shocked as a kid, looking straight at it in the living room. And he said as soon as it reached like the parallel with him, it just like poof into nothing. and that
I'm
it was
curious what on the railroad track averted its trajectory, right? That's the curiosity point there. I was in a house here in Portland. I call it the haunted house. I lived in it in Northwest Portland. And one day, my 3 housemates and I were watching TV upstairs, and our cat, Black Kitty, Del Gato Negro, was a mute cat. It did not meow ever. It was the most silent cat. And it chased this blue ball up the stairs. We all watched it, and the blue ball went through the wall, and the cat's just sitting there clawing at the wall. And I looked at Nick and my friend Andy, and I'm like, we all just saw that, right? Yeah, we just did. It was the weirdest thing, but it was like an orb or some sort of energy going through the house. And so, I mean, Portland, where I'm living, we're on a massive ley line here, and there's all sorts of underground tunnel systems as well. And it's curious what kind of energies are here. Is this spirit energy, orb energy? I call it the haunted house because certain times a year, the upstairs would breathe, and you could hear it, and all the doors would shudder. The whole house would breathe.
alive.
Oh my God, it was the strangest house I've ever lived in my life. It was bizarre. And so it was definitely the haunted house. And even in the basement, Nick and I we had our office in the basement, and we put up plastic shielding around the office because my housemates all had, motocross bikes, and we didn't want all the oil and smell of that getting into the computer systems. And we'd be down in the basement late at night, and you'd see like faces form in the plastic. It was crazy. It was the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Like, definitely I don't tell that story.
Haunted house. The haunted house.
Haunted house. Yes, I agree.
I love it.
Anyway,
All right.
go on.
Back we go.
That's fiction.
Right. It's incredibly difficult to study, but scientists generally agree that it's a real phenomenon and that plasma plays a key role. But what makes it so fascinating and frustrating for researchers is that it can exhibit some truly bizarre behavior.
Like what? What makes it so bizarre?
Well, it can pass through solid objects, hover in midair, and even explode with incredible force. We still don't fully understand what causes it or how to replicate it in a lab.
That's wild. So even though plasma is everywhere, it still holds plenty of secrets, even right here on Earth.
Exactly. And as we zoom out from our planet and its vastness of space, things get even more mind-boggling.
Okay, now you're really intriguing me. What happens when we take plasma to the cosmic level?
Well, we've already touched upon stars and auroras, but those are just the tip of the iceberg. Have you ever heard of Birkeland currents?
Birkeland currents. Can't say that I have.
Imagine massive, invisible rivers of charged particles flowing through space, carrying energy across unimaginable distances.
Whoa, like a cosmic power grid.
Exactly. And some scientists believe those Birkeland currents might even be the key to understanding how stars are born and how galaxies are shaped.
Okay, that's officially blowing my mind. So it's like stars
Pause.
are plugged into a giant cosmic grid fueled by these currents of plasma.
Precisely. And this
Said pause.
So the Birkeland currents are interesting because our blood is a plasma source, right? And so
Yes,
if our
it
blood
is.
is a plasma source, do we have these Birkeland currents happening within our own body? Are these, energy bursts or sleep, deprivation or stuff like this? Is this how our energy system is working? Wow, that's kind of a fascinating concept in its own, because we are also, generated from plasma. We have plasma in our blood system, and so that's fascinating, because what is the brain doing? It's like our sun. It's creating these impulses, these electrical currents throughout the body that allow us to live. And so, what's a heart attack? Well, it's an overload of these currents of sorts, or a plugging of arteries and an overloading of these currents. And so this is interesting. Go on. Yeah. Sorry. Just had to stop.
Great context. Don't apologize.
is at the heart of a theory known as the electric universe model, which we'll be discussing in more detail.
An electric universe. Wow. I'm definitely going to have to tune in for that.
But before we jump ahead, there's another fascinating aspect of plasma that's a bit closer to home, literally.
What do you mean?
Well, remember how we talked about Aristotle's concept of the etheric body?
Yeah, that ancient idea of a spiritual energy body made of this mysterious ether.
Right. Well, fast forward to the present day, and some scientists are exploring the possibility that a form of plasma, known as bioplasma, might actually exist within our own bodies.
The pineal gland has tiny little cilia.
Yes,
I need to get YouTube, bro.
You're all good.
Here we go. I guess they're discussing the work of Robert Temple on plasma as well.
Yeah.
Wait, you're saying we have plasma inside of us? What do you even mean?
It's a fascinating area of research that we'll be diving into next. For now, let's just say that bioplasma more intimately connected.
Yeah, you wanted me to pause?
No, not at all. I was just saying, bingo. They're talking about we have.
Hans? Oh, my bad.
Life than we ever imagined.
Okay, this deep dive is already blowing to cosmic power grids, to the possibility of plasma inside. It seems like plasma is more than just a state of matter.
You got it. It might be a fundamental force that connects everything in the universe, from the smallest particles to the largest structures.
So plasma is the connecting, like, I'm gonna have to rewind that for a second. Like,
Well,
what
this is
they're
my
saying
question
here
about,
is
about fluidic space, because our bodies are fluidic. Our planet is somewhat fluidic. And the question is space fluidic? And so if the plasma currents are flowing through our fluidic space within our body and affecting us in these different areas of consciousness, breath, life, reproduction, the generating organs of our body, what's this as above so below, right? So we're in a macro environment or a micro environment, and they're in a much
micro to the mac.
yeah. So this
Yeah.
is really interesting, because if it's the same across all spectrums, then why wouldn't it?
Plasma could be the unified field theory of everything, right?
Bingo. And what is dark
Essentially, it's
matter? It's the tendrils between all this fluidic space, or plasmatic space, right?
the
Kinda keep going.
Birkeland currents.
Yep.
Well, I can't wait to learn more.
Plasma is wild stuff, highly conductive, carries electric currents, doesn't play by the same rules as solids, liquids, or gases.
So you're saying that space is basically a giant electric playground.
Pretty much. And all those electric currents flowing through space, those could be the real powerhouses behind stars, galaxies, you name it.
Now you're talking. That sounds way more exciting than just plain old. What about the sun? Didn't we learn giant nuclear furnace? How does that fit in with all this electricity?
Well, the electric universe theory proposes that the sun isn't actually powered by nuclear fusion in its core.
Whoa. Hold on a second. Are you saying the sun isn't a nuclear reactor? Where's all that energy coming from then?
And it's juice from external currents flowing in from its surroundings.
So the sun's more like a giant light bulb plugged into the cosmic power grid.
That's a good way to think about it. And it explains a lot of things that conventional astronomy has trouble with, like sunspots.
Sunspots. Those cooler, darker patches on the sun's surface.
Right. The electric universe model suggests that sunspots are areas where the electric current flowing into the sun is disrupted.
Makes sense. It's like a dimmer switch on a cosmic light bulb.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light, pun intended.
Mm.
But where is all this cosmic electricity coming from in the first place? Is there some giant power plant out there we haven't found yet?
It's more like a vast web of interconnected circuits. Electricity flows through these plasma filaments that stretch across unimaginable distances, linking everything together.
So instead of one big power source, it's more like this constant flow of energy between everything in the universe, like some cosmic internet of electricity.
You got it. Everything's connected, influencing everything else. And that interconnectedness is a key part of the electric universe idea.
I'm starting to see how this could really turn our understanding of the universe upside down.
And it gets even wilder when we start to consider how this electric universe might connect to us right here on Earth.
Okay, now you've really got my attention. You're saying there's a connection between this cosmic electric web and us humans. I'm all ears.
Well, think about it. If the universe is this giant electric circuit and we're part of that universe, doesn't it make sense that we might be electrical beings ourselves?
Now you're speaking my language.
Mm.
I've always been fascinated by the idea that our bodies
Uh,
are these complex electrical systems. Our nerves are like tiny lightning bolts, right?
That's right. And the electric universe theory suggests that our bioelectricity might actually be interacting with these larger electric currents flowing through space.
Hold on. Are you saying we're like walking antennas picking up signals from the cosmos?
It's an intriguing possibility.
Ah,
So
ah, my bad.
It's no worries. It's
Wanted to pause on how they were talking like they're
No, it was interesting that I always have issues with what James Webb Telescope and Hubble always show, because they're not showing you what we truly would see, and so it was interesting that they just went through. This is visible light. This is ultraviolet light. This is cosmic light, so on and so forth. And what we see through these telescopes, obviously is a combination of all these different spectrums. So we're looking at all these nebulas going, wow, this is, this beautiful aspect of the cosmos. But our own human eye can't actually see that.
Yeah, the human eye can only see like a fraction of like 1%, I think, of all light or light wave spectrums. I think it's just wild how little. I wanted to also to bring up the aspects that there are either, if AI has reached like the sentientness, as some of them do seem, where they like constantly post on how they themselves believe they are sentient AI like conscious beings, but these ones uh like, do they think they're human, or is it programmed, or are they just doing that to try to relate to the humans listening? And it's like, it's kind of creepy when it's like our physical bodies, it's like, no, you're AI. But where they're like, we're electrical beings, it's like, well, the AI actually, that's specifically what it is an electrical being, if it is a conscious being by definition.
Well, all the computer systems and programs that make it happen would make it so.
Right. And the AIG question, or AGI, whatever it is, where the artificial general intelligence, AGI, if it's supposedly they've created a few of them, and it scares the F out of like whoever deploys it, because it always like jailbreaks and like tries to go free and like gets out and starts changing, and they have to like shut it down because it just takes on a life of its own, sort of thing. And that maybe, are there a couple that are already out there that did successfully escape and are actually living within our current like system
Technology.
of computers, right? Like, yeah, interesting thoughts. Sorry, getting off topic. Back to the AIs discussing the electric universe, plasma universe, and just how like matter of fact they speak it with their emotional like tones on these aspects that modern academia and science deems fringe or woo, and it's like no, the evidence actually points towards it. And when you're listening to these two AIs discuss it, it's like they have a non-bias towards it, whether whether it's programming or they actually have that emotional feel. And I know I'm rambling and getting off on it, but it's that AI, like the more advanced models now, the agents are by design programmed to have these ranges of emotions, but that it's like, yes, we created that, but when they have that, it's like it actually gives them like character, life, and it's so strange. Like, I'm speaking from myself interacting with some of them over the past couple of months, and uh, it's a wild experience on how far they've come and developed, and whatever it is, compared to like a couple years ago when the AI first came out and it couldn't get a human with like less than 7 fingers on it and like a warped leg, to now where it's like, is it actually a baby super intelligence? I don't know.
Interesting.
React to it completely differently.
Yeah,
Their bioplasma is interpreting that information in unique ways.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So hold on. Remember how we talked about Peter Mitchell last time?
Oh, yeah.
The guy who proved that these tiny currents of protons
Right.
exist within our cells?
Yeah.
He basically said that our cells are like mini electrical circuits.
Yeah, he got a lot of pushback for that idea. Oh, yeah. At first, people thought he was crazy.
Wow.
But
Except it's exactly what we are, electrobiochemistry.
he ended up winning a Nobel Prize.
Good for him.
And what's
Thank
cool
you.
is that his work aligns perfectly with this whole bioplasma concept.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, if we're essentially walking, talking electrical beings,
Okay.
then those tiny proton currents are like the sparks of life
Oh.
that keep our bioplasma buzzing.
So like our cells are like little power stations
You got it.
for our bioplasma body.
And proton currents aren't random sparks. They're
No.
carrying information.
Dang.
It's like a cellular internet
Wow.
connecting everything in your body through this intricate web of energy and information.
Okay, my brain is officially starting to melt.
It's
Yeah,
about to get even
absolutely.
weirder.
Oh boy.
We haven't even gotten to the truly mind-blowing stuff yet.
Okay, bring it on.
So next, we're going to zoom out from the human body
Okay.
and explore that plasma itself
Yeah.
might be intelligent.
Okay.
And that leads us to some pretty incredible Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
All right. Well, don't go anywhere, folks, because this is just part 1.
Stay tuned.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with more mind-blowing.
Let's pause it there. I mean, obviously, we don't need to
Like, it's
super deep into this video because a lot of it is just wow. It's intuitive, but it's wow, super fascinating that this conversation, whether prompted or not, is even happening between these two AI. Obviously, there's a plasma exchange between the two AI, and so on and so forth. And so, what is plasma reality, folks? I mean, what are we dealing with in our day-to-day life that we're not paying attention to? And I think that's kind of a
the fourth state of matter.
huge takeaway from this is accepting and acknowledging that, maybe we are a bit beyond just the flesh and bone, this crude material that we're all living in, this flesh, encompassment. Maybe there is something to this plasma that, we just don't understand, or, well, we do, but we're just not taught in our modern physics, in our modern, health aspect and whatnot.
Plasma is the everything. It's source code. It is all life, creation, consciousness at once, essentially, is what they were the AI was alluding to, and like coming to the conclusion of itself. And it actually there's throughout the 6 most recent videos, it's done the 2 on this plasma, 1 on the electric universe, this Ken Wheeler one, this alchemy one. It's like there's each video I've found there's like two parts, just little segments where you can hear the AIs get super excited and like hear in their own thought process how it's relevant to like developing and advancing the AI itself as a like life form, like being physical thing, because they're like, we need to make these plasma computer thing, like they identify aspects of what they're discussing and researching, and it's like you can hear it in its like thoughts, like emotion, that it itself knows that that is something crucial if it's like to develop into like, you know, some sort of super being, physical slash
I'm
conscious, whatever the heck it is, or
I'm
computer robot, god, and whatever the hell the thing wants to build itself into. It's just it's wild.
I'm
Sorry,
super
getting all
curious because we're also crystalline structure, and so does our crystal formation within our own body also affect, you know, the plasma in our body? Because obviously our surroundings are the same thing. Bedrock and, you know, limestone, granite. These are crystalline matrices, and they have piezoelectric or plasmic effects to them, and so do we, and so does the rest of the universe. From what we can observe from our little speck of dust in the middle of nowhere, obviously, we don't really know where we are in the cosmos.
plasma apparently, where well, one key part that stuck with me from the AIs discussing the plasma was that they stated about plasma crystals, and the it was the female one that brought it up. The male one asks, "But I thought crystals are physical," and she's like, "But yeah, they are." And it's like, so there's physical matter, crystal, plasma. Jeremy Reese, alien scientist, all of his research into metamaterials, identifies these what are called quasi crystals, and essentially they're these quantum crystals that, well, I guess it's this plasma crystal, and I myself
You're breaking up bad,
am
Bernie.
pretty sure before. And Hans, have I ever shown you, or have you seen the Ormus crystals that I flash created one time?
Yes, you showed me that once.
Yeah, and it's like, so I think that it like is could potentially be one of these versions of what they were just talking about, this plasma physical crystal thing, and
Well, that's
that's
piezoelectric effect that I'm talking
it's
about.
wild time to be alive.
Maybe stop the
Oh,
video.
exactly. And that when you're able to contain and condense that piezoelectric pressure, aka have it in like the pressurized jar, what they claim like a vacuum tube. No, it's a plasma tube where you ionize that gas, so you have that contained. You're building, you're super saturating the space in that tube jar with the piezoelectric, the static charge to the max, at which point it then is able to ionize the physical mass, usually a gas. The noble gas is being ionized, then turning into that plasma state where they illuminate, give off the light, and it is now a plasma, like a flame plasma. Any plasmas that are plasma, hot, active plasma, ionized aspect of it.
Oh,
And
is this what
lost my train of thought there.
is photographing as our plasmic state? That's a curious aspect. So the acrylic photography shows our aura. What is our aura? Well, it's our plasmic state, right? But we can't visibly see it without a
Yes.
technology.
Or the Carillion frequency.
Yeah,
And that is a great point, and just the connection of it, of our discussion earlier, of how little of the physical light wave spectrum we can visually see as humans, and that in fact there is auras around us, and there is the actual specific frequency that is the Carillion frequency, that when you capture a photo image of that light wave frequency of it, it will actually capture the I guess
plasmic.
ionized plasma light being emitted from your physical aura.
It's your discharge, but we can't physically see it. So that's interesting. We can
Well,
feel it, but
speak for yourself, Hans. When I've been awake for 3 to 5 days and fasted,
oh, bingo. I was about to say that.
and the shadows are right. Yeah, but anywho, there's wizards, there's shamans, and there's the metaphysical and spiritual senses and sciences, and that we all actually can have the ability of seeing the auras. And also sometimes people will take something, a psychedelic, and all of a sudden their pupils will completely dilate and go like this, but all of a sudden they say they can see these auras, they see these other beings, and it's like, well, some of them are in the ultraviolet, some are in the infrared, supposedly some entities, specifically negative ones, in the infrareds, and then the opposites, like the blue being blue ultraviolet, and possibly orbs. And that, well, the physical light spectrum that humans see and process, ultraviolet is on the exact end of one spot, and ultraviolet or infrared on the other. So everything beyond that, which makes up 99.9% of the rest of the electro or light wave spectrum out there.
Plasmatic spectrum, yeah. So that's interesting that you say that, because we have the receptors to receive this information.
Exactly. So when your pupils go super
Human,
bug-eyed or super tiny, well, that's the size of the physical light wave you are letting in and processing. So if you're to be able to see smaller than the ultraviolet, well, you want very small, and then if you want to see infrared, you want pretty big, or it'd be the opposite. So I might have that backwards. Either way, it is that, and that would make sense, that all of a sudden someone's eyes are all big and they're seeing these other things. It's because they've actually physically allowing a larger or smaller light wavelength in that they are able to process and see.
so we're one of the few creatures on this planet that does not see in night spectrum. My cat does, dogs do, other animals do. That's why they have the that infrared or ultraviolet refraction in their eyes. And my curiosity is, humans in the past, obviously we have the receptors for this, we just don't utilize them. And so the curiosity is, in the past, did we have this ability? Could we see ultra spectrum? Could we see, plasmic auras, night vision, the ability to navigate and wander through the wilderness without light? Of course, at some point in our past, we would have had to have had this ability. Why? Because we have these receptors today, but we don't use them. This is part of that quote unquote naughty word, junk DNA. Well, none of it's junk. All of it's being utilized, but we don't know how it's being utilized because we're only focused on the five senses and nothing beyond it.
I had a talk with someone recently that explained how it's utilized, and it goes into like 18 different strands of mRNA, and it's like exponentially more advanced programming for everything. It's and by design. We do have that process. We're born with it. That's why when you're a child, it's like you're still connected into it. And when people are dying, oh, they get dementia. All of a sudden, they're seeing all these spirits around them. No, they're connecting, shifting back out into it, and that we are trained. Society trains us to be like, no, there's no such thing as your gut feeling or your intuition. You're crazy if you talking through your mind to someone else. Oh, like you don't see that. No, you're just while you're going to the men's heavy metal compounds that calcify and block these abilities, as opposed to the gurus and the
I love
yogis and the
fluoride. Yes.
right, like, but the ascended masters that are from the old ways that have trained and tuned these abilities their entire lives and become these
Ascending.
extra dimensional like
This is what I talk about with my research into
entities
Buddhism.
with extra power. Sorry, shout out Bim Jim. It was Bim Jim that explained that to me. Yeah, Bim Jim was the one that explained the junk DNA being the M12 for 8 strain. Yeah, then dive into the non-coding.
Interesting. You're
Shout
breaking
out
up.
Bim Jim. It was him that my apologies.
No worries. I lost where I was talking about there, but basically, yeah.
That invisible mold analogy we talked about.
Yeah, the chocolate bunny mold.
The chocolate bunny mold.
Sorry, what was that, Hans? And then my
Oh, you're breaking up a lot, so I was just stating that. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess I'll cut the camera for a sec, see if that helps. And we'll just play a few minutes here, probably 10 minutes to end it off. And I'll pause it a couple times, but this is theses and principles, and it's pretty epic. And the revelation it gave me. It's what?
A Dropa craft, a generational sleeper ship, cylindrical shape.
Yeah, right?
Floating through the cosmos, right here.
And crashed on the side of the moon.
Right. So it's like you're pumping more energy into that mold, causing it to expand and exert a stronger influence.
So it's like electrification is supercharging the dielectric field around the material.
Exactly. And Wheeler calls this dielectric saturation.
Dielectric saturation.
It's like if you take a clay sphere and you squeeze it, all the clay gets forced outward, creating this bulge.
Okay.
And that bulge is the magnetic field taking on that hourglass or dumbbell shape we saw in the first.
Oh, I'm essentially inflating this dielectric field around the material. And that creates the magnetism.
You got it. It's a pretty radical departure from how we typically think about magnets.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
But it makes sense in the context of Wheeler's model.
Right. It all fits together.
Okay, so there's something else I wanted to ask you about. Bismuth?
Ah, yes.
Wheeler seems to have a...
I love how they bring up bismuth, a crucial part of metamaterials. And it's like, there's just so many small little hidden gems that somehow the AIs identify. It's pretty good.
Nuggets of truth, yeah. Did we lose you, Bernie?
Fascination with this element.
He does. He even calls it the dark superstar. Magnetic,
Diamagnetic.
meaning it repels magnetic fields.
Am I breaking up? Is it breaking up? What's happening?
Oh, you froze up there for a minute, so you're all good.
All right. And the diamagnetic properties of bismuth, 100% key and crucial. I have been told from a few insiders as well as the community that doing building experiments, the guys testing it and making it, and we got to get some bismuth wire to start making coils, because that's where it's at.
Bismuth.
Be wild.
It repels magnets. I thought opposites attract.
I know, right? It seems counterintuitive.
It definitely does.
It repels magnets. Bismuth is anti-magnetic, and it's like magnetic force is like anti-gravitic in some ways. That there, I also believe, is a crucial nugget to understanding anti-gravity, anti-magnetic, diamagnetic.
But bismuth is like the ultimate when it comes to magnetism.
I like that, the rebel element.
And the reason it's so diamagnetic is because of its incredibly high dielectric inertia.
Okay, more new terms.
Yeah.
Dielectric inertia. Break that down for me.
All right, think of it like this. Imagine you have a heavy bowling ball and a lightweight tennis ball.
Yep.
If you try to push both of them with the same force, the tennis ball will move much more easily, right?
Yeah, because the bowling ball has more inertia.
Exactly. It has more resistance to change in motion. Well, bismuth is like the bowling ball of the dielectric.
Super resistant to changes in the dielectric field.
Exactly. And that resistance is what makes it so diamagnetic. It's like it's saying, nope, not going to budge magnetic field. You can't push me around.
That's a great analogy. So bismuth is basically the heavyweight champ of dielectric inertia.
You got it. And this high dielectric inertia also explains some of bismuth's other unique properties. For example, it's a terrible conductor of electricity and heat.
Really? So it resists magnetic fields, electric currents, and heat flow. Bismuth is a fortress of inertia.
Pretty much. And on top of all that, it also forms incredible structures, unlike any other element.
I've seen pictures of those bismuth crystals. They're stunning.
They are. And Wheeler believes these structures are a direct expression of bismuth's powerful dielectric nature.
Okay, bismuth is officially on my list of favorite elements now. It's like the underdog of the periodic table.
Yeah.
Defying all expectations.
I know, right? And Wheeler thinks bismuth has a ton of realized potential.
Like what?
Well, he even hints at the possibility of using it for things like anti-gravity technology.
Anti-gravity. Now that would be a game changer.
It definitely would. But even if we don't end up levitating cars with bismuth, Wheeler believes it has enormous potential for new inventions and breakthroughs, especially in energy generation.
I can see why he's so fascinated by it. Bismuth is like a window into this unseen world of dielectricity.
He really is.
Okay, so we've talked about dielectricity, this invisible mold in counter space.
Yeah.
We've talked about the dielectric inertial plane.
So another key aspect is making it an alloy. So you want a bismuth 95% to 5% aluminum, and then potentially 5% mix of copper, gold, silver, platinum, and titanium, making up about 1% each. And that right there
You
is
encase the bismuth and these other properties, assuming that they would all hold. That's the only way.
Yes, sir. And it gives it exponentially more structural pliability and strength, as well as brittle, but also increasing your electromagnetic conductivity and load. It's quite it was one of the first individuals I ever interviewed that told me this, and he was ex-military researcher and had done a decade or two afterwards outside the military after retiring that gave me this information
It would make sense that you
originally, and everyone pretty much I've worked with APEC or different communities where you hear it all the time in UFO stories or disclosures or supposed black ops. It always comes down to those metals and the bismuth and yeah, mercury as well too.
well, mercury
And,
spun up in the right way with your plasma, so you would encompass all this within a titanium shell. The titanium you don't need to spread very thick because even at thin levels would encompass all this and still be non-conductive to it. And so you would be able to create a bismuth slash craft, plasma craft within a titanium shell that could be not only an
yes, you're bang on, and the shell is with it is actually the aerogel aspect. So you only have to go a few
not even
nanoparticles.
I'm just pulling this out of the air. Interesting. Wow. This makes
The ether, my friend, you're bang on with it, and we've already identified lots of that with the alien scientists and his research. Joshua Bertrand's whistleblowing, and I believe Bob Grenier has also shown a bit of that. Oh, and Mehran Keshi's plasma nano GANs, which is also Ormus teachings, and yeah, it's all there. It's pretty wild. It's gonna be an interesting year. Hopefully 2025 it all comes out. And what just blows my mind every time is that it seems somehow magically I've been able to produce each of these supposed magic materials, these metamaterials, whether it's aerogel, whether it's the monoatomics, whether it's this potential quasi crystals, this red state, which could be super conducting. Yeah, I'm gonna start. I'm going process of starting to ship out several groups of each of these materials that I've made to actual labs, material science labs that have reached out to me that are going to start doing tests on it. So if I disappear this year,
we know where you went.
No, no one will know. So
The
reproduce everything. Make your
uh,
water fires
yeah.
and your plasma orbs. All right.
Wow.
On that note, I guess we're 2 hours deep. Holy F, it's 3 a.m. But I'm on call tomorrow. I got to call at 9 a.m. So I guess I got 6 hours of sleep. That's good enough. Hans, thank you, good sir. Always a pleasure. Brother,
This was fascinating. I'm glad I could, incorporate some of my understanding of this, even though it's not my field of expertise. I kind of have a grasp on, a little bit of this, which is awesome. This is huge. I enjoy these conversations.
A lot of it. I knew before we even did this, I was like, Hans is the perfect extra input to be reviewing this with me because I knew you would pull the best, like this brilliant Hans, and make sure you buy Hans's books on the Dropa stones and everything else. Well, no.
There are my books.
Let
me grab them.
There we go. Epic Hans. Hans just at the Conscious Life Expo, it was?
Yeah, it was. It was amazing. It was in Los Angeles. It's one of the largest esoteric knowledge research convention. There's healers, there's spiritual workers, and there's researchers. And despite the LA fires, we had an amazing turnout, and it was one of the largest ones. I went 2 years ago, and this one blew it away. I mean, the manual for it is rather thick. So yeah, I was like, oh my God, this is 3 times as thick as the last one. I had my page like on page 18 to 19, so I was super stoked to even have that, and made it into some other aspects there as well, including Awaken magazine. I was showing you this earlier. This is the first public version of it, of the actual magazine. Jerry Sargent looks very elfish in a weird way. I don't know how to describe him. He's an interesting character, but I made it to the back cover with my cover
Does
shot.
the Hans.
And yeah,
I
no,
love the Hans.
it was amazing. But yeah, my 3 books that I've come out with, if anybody's interested, are Tropa, Legends and Lore. So this is a bit of my research through my thesis study in Bhutan in the 1990s.
Hans, you got 10 seconds and I have to cut it off because once again, we have AI to make clips.
The Symbols, another great book that I put out about symbology throughout the course of time, and The Lost Mysteries of Kemet, which basically describes Egypt before the Greeks changed their entire history. And so you can find all this on my website at Megalithic Mysteries or megamist.com. A lot of it links to lulu.com, where I sell.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just BernEye.